Welcome, everyone, to the second Summer Smasher Oceanside chat of this 8-chat series. We're really happy to have you, but I really want to get this one started. We have Christopher Yang of Tech Host Angels. He has done so much for the garage already. We're always happy to have him back. I know he has an amazing presentation for us. I'm going to let you introduce yourself at length, Chris. Go for it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Arcelia. So just a little bit about myself before we get started, right? My experience in software and also product development really spans over a decade. Currently, I serve as the VP of Engineering at Corporate Travel Management, an ASX top 200 company. Today, with really a market cap close to 2 billion US. I lead a group of engineers, architect, and QA analysts, as well as project managers in designing and launching leading edge and cost-effective travel solutions, as you know. Previously, I held leadership and management roles at DirecTV and Ticketmaster. So in addition to my career, I'm an executive committee member at TCA, one of the leading and most active angel investment network group in the US. And as the co-chair of the event committee, I manage TCA's relationship with the garage and different accelerators and VC on a consistent basis. And it's responsible for planning our events at TCA to increase our exposure to new members and startups. And in addition, I'm also a part-time instructor, faculty member at UCOA Extension. I spearhead UCOA's first Agile Project Management Certificate program. And finally, I'm also a member of Forbes Tech Council, where I frequently contribute to Forbes.com on topics related to technology, business strategy, technical project management, and entrepreneurship. Let's see. And so without further ado, let's jump right into our agenda today. And this is really the high level, the list of items we'll be addressing today, starting from Dan Olson's lean product process. We'll cover a list of different topics from comparing and really looking at the problem space versus solution space, down to the custom benefit ladders and different type of the hierarchies of needs, and look at a framework, importance versus satisfaction, and really get into the Kano models and a value prop grid. And finally, I'll share some insight in terms of how we should hypothesize, design, test and learn, and pivot to reach a better product market fit as we go. And I will leave some time at the end to answer and address specific questions that you might have if you're in own startup or some questions pertaining to your individual business models. So we all know product market fit, right? It's really was coined by Mark Andreessen in 2007 and later popularized by Eric Rice as part of the Lean Startup movement. It is by far the most difficult challenge. I mean, the product market fit is by far the most difficult challenge for most startup because nothing really matters without a strong product that meets initial demand. So really, don't spend time on pricing optimization, sales tool, marketing program, or cutting costs until you have discovered a winning solution, or in other words, a valuable product. As a startup, you race against the clock to achieve product market fit before running out of cash. So it is really a stressful, exhausting experience, but it can also be equally fun and financially rewarding if things do go well. So how do you measure or observe product market fit? It really shows up in various forms, right? And happy customers, lower churn rates, shortened sales cycle, rapid organic growth over time. It really is one of those things that you know it when you see it. But how do you achieve it? How do you achieve product market fit? So to begin, I want to cover Dan Olson's lean product process a little bit here. It's really an excellent framework that encourages thinking about products and validate key assumptions and decisions as you go. It aims to reduce reworking by testing key hypotheses about each components, especially the target market, underserved customer needs, and your value prop early on. So you don't leave these important elements to chance. The lean product process has a total of 6 steps, as you can see on this slide. First, you need to find out about your target customer, define your target customers, and then identify the underserved needs. Combining the 2 top layers on the slide, you create your market. A market really is, by definition, a group of individuals who have common needs or who share common needs. Next, we define the product value. I would say your product value value proposition that hypothesize about the customer need and your product could address. A good product is designed around a set of needs that can be logically bundled or addressed together. This will then lead to creating an MVP feature set. The minimum functionality required to test your hypothesis and ensure that you're heading in the right direction. And finally, you must design your user interface, your UX, and create a user experience to present to your customers. After combining your UI, UX, the value prop, and then MVP feature set, you have created your product. So after constructing your prototype, it's really the time to test with real customers and garner feedback. This is where the rubber meets the road. And to really achieve a strong product market fit, you must get the hypothesis you made about each component's accurate enough. You'll not achieve this on your first attempt for sure. So you must learn from continuous customer feedback and quickly adjust your hypothesis and MVP prototypes so you can retest and improving the product market fit each time. And let us look at the problem space and solution space. Your product exists in the solution space. This includes your wireframe, your mockups, and prototype. However, the problem space is where all the customer needs and benefit live. Importantly, you must not immediately jump to solutions. So you always start with the problem space first. As you explore the problem space, suspend your judgment temporarily and leave the validation for later. You'll have plenty of opportunities to value your solution later. Don't worry about that. Separating the problem space with the solution space, as you can see on the side here, enables an outside-in product development mindset where the lean product team can proactively solicit customer feedback on early design and test the team's problem assumptions early on. A good understanding of customer needs and preferences help the team explore potential solutions. That clear understanding of the problem space can also expand the range of possible solutions, creative solutions, to potentially offer a higher return on investment. In fact, most market disruption normally appears when a new solution better serves an existing market needs. And as the diagram shows, the problem and solution spaces both have room for multiple options. Problem diverges and converges. Similarly for the solutions. The lean product team, as I referred to earlier, first explore various scenarios. And once the problem has been clearly defined, the team consider various implementations that best meet the need of its users. Keeping the solution space and the problem space separate while alternating between them as you validate your assumptions / hypothesis. A really rigorous study is by far the best approach to achieve a strong product market fit. So we talk about benefits, right? What is a benefit or value in this sense? A benefit conveys value. It increases something that's desired or decreases something that's undesired. So customers are generally not skilled at discussing the problem space. Instead, they're better explaining what they like or dislike about a particular solution. So thus, a solutions-based discussion with the customers is much more fruitful in trying to solve the problem with them together. As you conduct your customer interviews, you can repeatedly ask, why is this feature important to you? The 5 whys, as Eric Rice alluded to in his book, The Lean Startup, until it does not offer any new answers. This helps discussion focus on higher level benefits, like climbing up the rungs of the ladder, right? So detailed benefits such as attributes or features can add up to overall transformational benefits, right? So you see the features and attribute, and then as you go up the ladder, there are functional benefits, process benefit, emotional benefits, before you get to the transformational benefits that really change the lives of your customers. So these detailed benefits will really help, and they converges at the top, right? The laddering interview technique connects the details of a customer benefit to higher level goals. It provides clear problem solution map by linking features with end customer values. So let's walk through this simple hierarchies of need diagram. This is about this from Dan Olson as well. It's also it addresses the needs at different level of a web application. Custom needs can also be hierarchies. It's important to keep the hierarchies in mind during solutioning. The value created by addressing one need is dependent on how well another need is met, right? So that is walk through this hierarchy of web user needs. Fundamentally, the product must be available when users want to use it. These lower level needs must be met before any of the higher level needs even matter. After that, the product needs to load fast enough for the user to navigate the site. Then it comes down to quality, right? Is the product buggy? How many escape defects are present in this release? And then we examine the product feature sets. Does the product perform as it's supposed to be? Does it contain the minimum viable set of features for the user to validate your hypothesis? And finally, does the UX design at the top work well? Is it easy to use? Is it enjoyable? How well does the product interact with its users? So as you can see on the diagram, right, the top two, UX design and feature sets are really what will really increase as you improve the experience. It will increase the user satisfaction. The bottom three in terms of the defects, load time, uptime are really the must-haves. If you don't fulfill those requirements or deliver those as part of your initial MVP, it's really not going to work well and with your customers. So once you have identified the customer needs, you will need to prioritize them based on customer values. This is an excellent framework that you're saying, the importance versus satisfaction framework. It is a great place to start. In the diagram, the importance of user needs is on the vertical axis, and the user satisfaction is on the horizontal axis. The higher the importance of the need the product addresses, the more customer value it delivers. Similarly, the higher the user satisfaction it creates, the more customer value it offers. If we're to divide the graph into 4 quadrants, you'll see that most of the product opportunities lie in the upper left. A product in this quadrant has high importance of needs, but low satisfaction. In other words, it is central, but underserved. This is a very important point here. In the upper right quadrant, it has high importance and high satisfaction. This would be a case in a market where the leading product is performing extremely well and really dominating the market. And finally, the bottom of 2 quadrants represent product ideas of low user importance. in most cases, it will not produce enough value for its usage or for us to allocate our precious resources. The amount of value created can be calculated by multiplying the importance of satisfaction score, right? So graphically, it is the area in this brown rectangle, the plotted that's created by the plotted point and the origin. And then we could also look at the potential opportunity here, right? The opportunity to add value is represented by the gold rectangle here on the slide. It can be expressed with the formula opportunity equals to importance times 1 minus satisfaction, right? I mean, this is really, we're getting into really academic, but for those who enjoy a more analytical approach, these two equations really enable you to quantitatively measure customer value and really be able to prioritize your opportunities accordingly, right? At the end of the day, you only have so many hours in the day, so much resources and budget. You need to make sure that you're addressing the most pressing needs of your customers. So next, I want to get into a Kano model, right? How many of you have? I mean, I guess we'll get into Q&A afterward, right? So, Kano model was really originally developed by Noriaki Kano in 1980, right? I'm pretty sure many of you have probably used this at some point in your career. It really categorizes features into 3 categories: the basic expectations or must-have, right? And then you have your performance payoff, and finally the delighters and excitement generators. This is very useful in terms of like deciding what the initial MVP feature set that you want to include in your product. Can classify customer preference into 5 categories as well: like attractive quality, one-dimensional linear quality, and also the must-have at the bottom. There are indifferent qualities and reverse quality as well, right? We'll get into them shortly. It emphasizes on the importance of feedback loop. So you can prioritize feature based on requirement that's producing the most customer satisfaction. As you can see, the customer satisfaction is on the vertical axis. It has 5 scale from all the way from delighted to dissatisfied. So let's look at each one of these attributes. So the basic attributes or must-haves are those features that must be present in the product or services for it to be acceptable. For example, like a bed, and a bathroom, a desk, the cleanness of a hotel room, right? So once the basic need have been implemented, customer satisfaction can no longer be increased by adding more must-haves, right? Customer satisfaction would never rise above the midpoint on this graph. A linear or performance feature is one which the more, the better holds true, right? Customer satisfaction has a linear relationship with quality of the feature. For example, the size of a room, a number of TV channels, on-demand videos, variety of equipment in the center. So these features go up, you are also increasing your satisfaction at the same time. Exciters or delighters are those features or unknown needs, in other words, that result in great customer satisfaction when delivered. Often, adding a price premium to the product, customer satisfaction rises dramatically based on even a partial implementation of an exciter. So what you need to do is prioritize development effort on all performance features, as many linear features as possible, and maybe blend in a few delighters. We'll evaluate that on the next slide. And keep in mind that features will eventually migrate down the Kano diagram, right, over time. For example, a Wi-Fi used to be a delighter, but nowadays it's just more of a linear or performance feature, and it's on its way becoming a must-haves. So yesterday's delighter become today's performance feature, and then becomes tomorrow's must-haves. So it all depends on the level of competition and innovation in your space. So now we have this determined what are your delighters, your basic benefits, and your performance benefits, or your linear benefits. Next, we want to use a value proposition grid to determine which features is to be included in your initial MVP. So this is a good exercise to look at. Compare yourself against your competitors in the space, right? So key differentiators are your outperforming performance benefits, as well as a unique excitement delighter, right? You don't want to compete on your must-haves, right? So in this example, you better have your basic benefits 1 and 2. And then next, you look at your performance benefit, right? So competitor A is doing extremely well in benefit 1, and similarly, competitor B is doing well in performance benefit 2, right? So you probably don't want to go head-to-head with those two competitors if there's other options, right? So it seems like they're not doing as well in performance benefit 3. So this could be a potential market for you to enter and really outperform your competitions in the space. So the rule of thumb is you need to be best in at least one performance benefit to even achieve any level of product market fit. And ideally, you want to have one unique exciter, right? In this sense, maybe you should include exciter number 2, rule number 7, in your initial product offering as well. So combining, let's say, an outperforming performance benefit with an exciter, this potentially could be a winning strategy, a winning solution. But more importantly, you also need to anticipate an important market trend and really skate to where the puck will be, not where it's being. That's a very important takeaway. On the next slide, I kind of want to talk about the hypothesize, design, and test and learn a cycle, right? You want to first formulate the problem space hypothesis, not getting into solution space right away, and really design and identify the best way to test your hypothesis during this design stage. And slowly expose the product and services to your customers once you check the initial 2 boxes, and then and learn for validated learning and to improve your hypothesis in the problem space. So this is actually a very important, I would say, product development life cycle. You have to go through different ways of testing and iterations. In the past, at CTM, we've done this at a different level, right? At the UX level, at the functional level, and to validate our design. Right? One example is at one point, we're in the process of rolling out a new booking funnel. So at that point, we're debating whether we build something that's similar to like an Amazon shopping cart, where a traveler can come in and add different type of travel items, including air components, like a flight ticket, as well as like a hotel segment or a car segment. The list goes on, right? And it gives the initial, I would say, assumptions that we want to provide as much flexibility to our customers, to our travelers, so they could build their own car, pretty much. But I mean, that assumptions has quickly been eliminated or invalidated after we have done some usability testing with userstesting.com, right? We actually built some prototypes using and design tools, interactive design tools. And then really have the, when we say build, right, we don't really need to build a true product. It could be mock-ups and wireframe as long as it's sufficient for you to validate your assumption, right? So what ends up happening is going through the A/B testing, the user, the traveler actually prefer a more of a trip builder approach that you're only getting, you're going through a funnel. So by selecting your air component first, so you do your air shopping first and select your outbound and return flights before getting to selecting the hotel and selecting the car. Again, this is a while back. It's just nowadays it's been pretty much the industry standard, how you shop and then book a trip. But before then, we'll try to see if there's other ways that we can make the user experience a bit more immersive, more creative. And through that validation process, we realized that it's not something that's attainable because there are so many edge cases that could go wrong. And then in most cases, a traveler will only be booking one segment followed by the other. So air is by far the most critical. You're not going to book a hotel until you finalize your air booking. Similarly for your car rental. So now that we have talked about the iteration process, right, and how we could use agile methodology and really learn from the validated learning and progress our product and achieve better product market fit. But I get asked this all the time, right? Say so your hypothesis of you're talking about customer is inaccurate, right? You can be really iterating at a higher level than where your true problem lies, right? So what you need to do is really revisit your hypothesis about your target customer and work with your way up or down. So the cost of pivoting is steep because you're altering your hypothesis in the problem space here, right? So when you're changing something related to your target customer, or a differentiator of your product offering, right? You literally doing the pivot. And sometimes during your customer learning process, right, you'll find a less central part of your value prop is what most resonate with your target customers, right? If this is the case, you probably should trim down the rest and really focus on the effort of this particular opportunity. I like to use this methodology as well. A mountain climbing analogy best applies here, right? And sometimes you just need to take a step back in order to reach a new height. You need to pivot, and so you could achieve a much stronger product market fit and deliver a winning product. And with that, that concludes my initial presentation. I want to leave some time at the end for any questions. Arcelia, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Let me change it to gallery view so we can see everybody. That was great. I have a ton of questions. So, it's interesting. Do you mind going back into your presentation to the customer benefits ladder? It was like maybe... Yeah, like there. So are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It's like the human...
Yes.
Yeah, so this strikes me very similarly as that. And it's funny because last week our speaker brought up Maslow's hierarchy. And I do think that there's something to be said about, just the basic foundational needs of a user all the way up to kind of this area where it's getting them to emotionally react and be more beneficial. Whereas like the features at the bottom, I think Dave Cole last week said are like basically like food and water, like, does this thing work for what we need immediately? And so I was wondering in like this breakdown, like, how do you identify as you get higher up this kind of chain, like, how do you identify whether or not you are successfully satisfying your customer? Do you just do that through surveys, or like, what are the signs of a business that's actually getting kind of higher up this hierarchy? And then also, as like this like second part to the question is, um, as an investor, what do you want to see? How do you want to see the teams that you're interested in investing in performing in this kind of hierarchy, especially if, since your earlier stage, is the expectation that they're offering transformational benefits, or is it something that you'd like to see them have plans for in the future? So basically my question is, how do you identify that you're satisfying customers? And as an investor, what are you looking for in a startup in this kind of satisfaction hierarchy?
Yeah, excellent question, Arcelia. And so it definitely, I think this was originated, it was first created by Dan Olson as well, as part of his lean product playbook. And it definitely is related to the Maslow hierarchy, as you mentioned earlier. And to answer your question, this is really a customer interview exercise, that because customers or the users are oftentimes are not really good at articulating what their problems are, but they most of the time they know what they want to see in the product, right? So by asking the whys multiple times, and why is this feature important to you, and hopefully you could get better answers each time until there are no new answers. And then this is, I think the end goal is you want to get to at least emotional benefits or the transformational benefits, right? And a lot of times you can see that many of the features converge into it could be grouped and then bundled into the same transformational emotional benefits. This will help you map your problem and your solution a lot more closely. That's the whole purpose of this exercise. And then why is this important? I guess you want to make sure that you're building the features that are of great value to customers, right? So, I mean, this will help you your prioritization, your road mapping down the road, and more importantly, the best way to spend your initial working capital until you reach the next round of funding, right? So you won't be able to, you want to be focused, just put it well, you won't be able to address every single needs at the same time. And then by going through this exercise, and then at some point start quantifying the potential opportunity, hopefully you could come up with a very sounding strategy. I hope that answers your question. And the second part, as an investor, yes, I think product market fit is central to pretty much all startup investments, right? And the very first thing we look at is whether the startup is solving an important problem, and also whether or not the opportunity is big enough, right? So, in other words, the TAM, the SAM that you guys are all familiar with, but we want to make sure that this is something that can be scaled. Then that's why the area, the gold underneath the diagram I showed earlier, the gold rectangular, is actually very critical. So to us as investors, and this is just presented in a completely different view. But I think that the scalability is extremely crucial to all investments.
So speaking about the benefits a little bit more,
Sure.
There was the kind of comparative chart against other competitors in the market. You had one up and it was kind of breaking down that one.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, you know, when you're looking when you're building a product, or let's say you have a product, and you want to start kind of categorizing what it is you're doing and where you fit, how do you determine what your offers are, whether they're basic, whether they're performance, or whether they're exciters? Is there like a rubric somewhere that breaks down, you know, like product features in a way that helps you to understand, you know, because you were saying like things that are kind of exciters naturally end up into the basic needs category over time because people have to have them. They become must-haves. So I'm just wondering, when you are determining based against everything else, are you just doing like random web searches, or is there like literally a place where you can go and see where features and products fall on this kind of scale?
I think the best way to obtain these feedback or inputs is through a customer survey, right? Or by interacting with your customers directly, right? So you could ask the same question in a different way, right? And hopefully you could determine whether this is indifferent to them, or this is a performance indicator that it scales linearly, but as you add more features to your product set, right? So these are must-haves, and if they're not included in the product offering, they will be the customers will be hugely upset. But they will be somewhat neutral because everyone else has got the same type of features already. So it will be a very little to none excitement. But they must be included in the initial offering, right? So customer surveying will be very important in this case.
I see. I don't want to bogart all of the questions. Does anyone in the group have any questions for Chris? And they don't necessarily have to be 100% tied to his presentation. He is a seasoned veteran in investment early stage. Oh, I do see a hand up. Julie. Julie, if you don't mind turning on your camera and asking.
Sure. Hi, Chris. It's a really great speech, and I do feel like I learned a lot. So I do remember like you have a cycle graph earlier that involved like making a hypothesis testing, like it's like a cycle graph. Probably later on, like in a later slide. Probably after this one. After this one, there's like a cycle. And
this one, right? Yeah.
Yes, this one. So the thing is, like my question is like, how much should you do to facilitate like more testing before we really engineer one real app? So basically, I am an engineer and I'm really excited. I just have those tendency to make a real app, like but not doing that much testing. So right now, for my background, I currently have my prototype, and we the founders team are really satisfied with the product. And we have asked some people about the product, but we don't really test it with those real customer intensively. So and the app is like a social media app. So we are thinking, testing by prototype cannot simulate the real experience, because, you probably need some users posting things, and that will like facilitate the whole social cycle. So like we are thinking like, how do you think in my situation, if you are me, like what should I do? Like how much should I test, and should I just go straight forward to make the app?
So before I talk about the testing thing. One misconception about MVP is that you want to get all your features that you want to be tested in there and out the door, right? And sometimes a common mistake that's been made by many teams is that they don't deliver a full end-to-end solutions. Although it's called MVP, right? You also want to make sure that you cover pretty much your UX, your reliability, and also your all the critical components that we kind of discussed, right? I mean, it addresses all 6 layers on this particular site, right? So not just the UX, but something that allows the team to be able to validate your assumptions and hypotheses with a sounding UX as well, right? It could be just a few items, a few features to be included, but you do if you ship something that's not usable or it requires a lot of digging and understanding for a potential customer to use it, it's not going to very well. It's not going to help validate your hypothesis very well, right? So on that note, right, I guess once you have achieved your initial MVP, you should probably start with maybe a smaller set of beta users or target customers, or even they could be reference customers as well, right? Maybe half a dozen is a good number, right? Instead of going all out with like a soft launch, right? So try to get initial feedback because you have to go through this. You have to go through at least multiple rounds of iteration before you're really getting something that's releasable, that's production ready, right? So it's hard to just talk about how much testing is needed without really looking at your product. But the general rule of thumb is make sure that you have some initial customer validation before going big bang.
Got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So probably I have like a small follow-up question. Is basically, when we are building up the app, it's an engineering question. Like when we are building up an app, we're making a great design, like we are design the database and design the whole API endpoint. So the thing I'm a little bit afraid of is, if we just get started doing the engineering, probably we'll just like end up making the whole product, because how we design it is basically we design the whole features. So I'm thinking like it's kind of slow. So is there any way to facilitate the process, like the engineering processing, building up MVP? You said basically probably we need to code it a little bit, but not going to a big bang before I really, we really test it out with the real customer.
Yeah, you touched on a few very interesting points, right? Now, first of all, I think you don't need to build a whole product before you could test, right? I shared my example earlier, right? You could just do some mock-ups and designs, and start testing with users, right? And because sometimes it's really not worth the effort, right? Like building a full-blown shopping cart for travel, and then a scratch unit will be a tremendous waste of effort and time, right? So or development resources, right? So a mock-up would just be sufficient at that stage. But to answer your second part of the question, yes, building up the whole backend infrastructure, the database, the APIs will be too time consuming. And I recommend you check out domain-driven development as just one way to like isolating your scenarios, and so you could just build out a couple of scenarios that's part of your happy path versus building out the entire I would say solution. And finally, it really depends on how you slice up your user story, right? So technically, your user story should be focusing on the what and the why versus the how, right? So if you build your user stories correctly, right, the subtasks should be able to address those user stories that of a high value to your customers versus building the entire system. And I totally get that there's efficiency gain, right? Because sometimes you can't just add a few tables in a database and today and add another one tomorrow just as you expand your scope, right? So you need to do this. You need to like do this consciously as well, right? Making sure that you're also building enough architectural runway for your application to scale and expand. But also keep in mind, right, your software code will always, I guess, evolve over time, and you need to continuously refactor it so it could be extendable and reusable, and be efficiently developed down the road.
Great, that is a really great answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. Any other questions from the group? Do not be shy. While someone builds up some courage, I was just wondering, Chris, in your experience, I'm sure you have seen so many startups come and pitch to TCA. And I'm just wondering if you have maybe an example of a team that has really truly understand this kind of idea of product market fit and kind of taken, maybe they didn't have this lesson in front of them, but they were clearly doing the right things in terms of offering great features to their users and satisfying their customers, versus maybe another team on the opposite side of the spectrum that was just a hot mess and was doing absolutely nothing and maybe building something that nobody wanted or whatever. Do you have some examples? I mean, obviously we don't want you to use names of startups, but it sometimes is nice to hear the experiences of big decision makers like yourself, for people who want to fare well when they sit in that room with a bunch of TCA panelists. So do you have any experiences to share?
I guess I could touch on this at a high level, right? And I have to say that every investor's slightly, or every investor is slightly different in terms of how they want to see the startup evolve over time, and then how much they value the learning over time as well, right? So to me, the learning itself is very important, right? The customer learning part, right? And although you might not have as much early on traction, right? If you could prove to me that you have done your customer surveys and learning, and you have pivot your business strategy, your product strategy accordingly, that itself kind of is crucial, right? It shows to me that the team is flexible, moldable, and adaptable, right? And that's actually most important, right? Because you're not going to get to the right solution on your first attempt, and it's every single startups actually pivot before they get to the final, I would say, product that has strong product market fit, right? So I mean, I know some investors look at, okay, the MRR, ARR is not there initially. They have some tractions, and with some substantial burn, right? But to me, I look at the learning process, how they got to here today, what are some things they have tried, and ultimately you want to bet on the jockey, not the horse, right? You want to make sure that the management team is experienced enough, or has the mentality, has a willingness to adapt and change. I guess we've seen a lot of deals that didn't even pass pre-screening. Most of it is there's not enough traction, or those are not the type of deals that TCA would invest early on, and also it could be I would say a product or a company with very little upside or opportunity, right? You might be competing with a lot of established and performing well products in the space, and so your TAM with SAM will not be there, right? So you really need to go back to the drawing board to see what features and product I could build that will yield the maximum, I would say, probability of success, and also return to investors. And more importantly, a startup is a risky endeavor, right? So the only way to mitigate that is through validated learning. You're gonna hear this from your VC friends all the time, right? The series, anything, we don't invest in anything prior to Series A, and because the deal is too small for us. I mean, we work on larger deals, but in reality is there's just so much uncertainty prior to Series A, or in the pre-C and C stage, right? The startups and the founding teams are still struggling to find the right product market fit, right? And this could go either way. it could be extremely successful, or the other way around, right? And the risk is just much higher. But after you have established that initial fit, the rest of it is just scaling, right? And the risk is more quantifiable. You can calculate, or calculatable. Yeah, that can be calculated. Mhm.
And then really quick before I push it over to Greg, is there a hard and fast rule on traction? Like what kind of traction would qualify as good traction for a team that TCA would be interested in?
Well, I think it all comes down to valuation, right? I mean, if you're coming down, I mean, and also the sectors and industry you are in, right? I mean, obviously, a product in the B2B SaaS space will yield a higher multiple versus the direct consumer product with CPG goods, those type of things, right? So the valuation needs to make sense, and also there's enough revenue. To me, I mean, somewhere around $500,000 to $1 million will be a very decent Series A or C investment, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't invest in anything that's pre-revenue. So each investor has his or her own appetite. So it's anything that's pre-revenue, obviously, the founding teams is crucially important. The past track record prior to this startup will become is also crucially important. So I guess I don't want to rule out the financial performance completely, right? But that's if you're generating revenue, some decent revenue, and then looking to raise anywhere from I would say with a pre-money valuation from 3 to, let's say, 20, and with a good I would say with a reasonable multiple. Those were some of the things that TCA looked at and simulated to other angel investment networks out there as well. Mm-hmm.
Great. And for all the Summer Smasher students, the lingo, if you don't get it right now, that's okay. MRR, traction, valuation, Series A. You can ask a bunch of these questions in the lab. For all of the other teams that are on the call, the TCA, they screen teams all the time, and these are the things that they really look for. So it's really great for you to share with us. Thanks, Chris. Okay, Greg, do you mind turning on your camera and asking your question? You're muted. You're muted. Oh, did you just get asked?
Excellent. Yeah, here we are. Yeah, I just got a monitor camera situation, so I'm facing a different way than my camera is. But so in the cycle, like the cycle slide that someone asked about earlier, you had that step between learning and hypothesis. And sort of when I've been involved in customer discovery in the past, it's been like difficult to keep, because like what I've been taught with customer discovery is like you're supposed to ask what they think of what you have right now. You're not supposed to ask what they're looking for, or what's on their wish list or anything like that, because that leads you in sort of, it doesn't end up getting you necessarily market requirements or things that you really actually have to have. And I was sort of curious with your take on that, because sort of through your presentation, it made it sound a little more like that's the information you actually want. And so I guess, how do you recommend going about getting that information, if not directly from asking someone? Like, how would you go about that, I guess?
I guess to answer that, thanks for that's a great question, Greg, right? You're not gonna take the customers or the users input at face value, right? This is just for you to map your problem space with your solution space, and going in more of a reverse order, right? And you could go either way, but definitely start with your problem before getting to actually developing the solutions. So the more information you can gather, the better it is to help the customers themselves understand what they really want, right? So initially, maybe the first attempt, they might say feature A, B, and C, right? But after you drill down further and then try to understand their intent, you might be able to prioritize some of these some of the features over the other ones, and maybe they end up realizing that some of these are not of low importance to them, or might not even solve the problem. Right? They thought the feature would solve their problem, but after doing your due diligence, doing your own analysis, it seems like those assumptions are not true, right? So the customers, the users can also make a wrong hypothesis as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think, Greg, it's interesting because I think this goes back again to our previous speaker who talked a little bit about having some product backbone when you go into customer discovery, so that, you know, you're not necessarily taking everybody's advice as some sort of compass towards, you know, a better product, but really better understanding the market and the user experience, but kind of like keeping that strong product backbone so you're not chasing a million solutions and finding yourself kind of unable to actually develop something, which I think happens sometimes if you don't go into your customer discovery journey really understanding what it is that you're building, at least at the beginning, and you're just kind of fishing for ideas. So it really depends on how well established you understand the market as you enter. It's not to suggest that it's kind of like a really interesting balance, Chris, where, you know, you have to believe in what it is that you're doing, but you also have to be flexible enough to understand the needs of who you're building it for, so that neither side kind of topples over. You know, like you can remain an expert, but you can also be flexible for the needs of the people that you're having these customer discovery interviews with. And I think it's probably a lot harder to do than it is to talk about.
RC, this is David Gerber. I can't turn my video on, but I do have a question.
Go for it, David. And then after, Naomi will be up.
Okay. Chris, excellent talk. Thank you very much. My question really has to do with the development of TAM, SAM, and SOM. And the context of the question is, you know, how do you advise young entrepreneurs who, you know, might not have access or money to buy for good market data? I know it's a generic question, but it comes up a lot. So any advice in terms of finding good data sources and how an investor looks at the data sources that we might?
A good question. I think, fortunately, many of you are part of the USC network, and if you are or have founders that on a team that's part of USC, you should have access to a lot of good resources through the library resources. And I think I'm pretty sure that at least Marshall's has got a couple good resources. I think the IPIS World Report, and then I think there's also another one that's Gartner, or that gives you a lot of the numbers related to TAM, SAM, and so on. I guess to your point, the second part of the question, do we actually look at those and try to validate those numbers, doing initial screening and due diligence? Not so much, right? And a lot of it could be it's just kind of obvious as well, right? I mean, if you are targeting a market and then the number just doesn't sound right, yes, we'll go back and take a look at it. Our analysts, our interns will probably go through the same type of resources and then find out whether the numbers are accurate during DD. But in essence, I think the focus is more on other parts, right? As long as this is something that's big enough, more than a few millions or even hundreds of millions, then that should suffice. Yeah.
So again, you said Gartner and IPS, is that correct?
I think so, right? Celia, do you have
You know, I don't know what the resources through Marshall are, but yeah, I mean, I know that the USC kind of network offers a lot of really great free resources. I can at the very least, I can get back to Dave on that.
Yep. Awesome.
And then quickly before we move to Naomi, we also have another question from Stacy, but we're
Thank you,
at
Chris.
time, and I just want to make sure that, can you hear me? I want to make sure that you have time to stay for a little bit for 2 more questions, Chris.
That's okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, I have time.
Okay, great. Naomi, go for it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I have 2 quick questions, if I can allow to ask both 2 questions, but you also can pick either one. So my first question is, we talked about the attractions of startup that would be appealing to CTD, but can we talk a little bit more about the pre-revenue stage, for example, the ideology or prototype stage that we cannot provide traction regarding the unit economics, and how can we actually to convey and measure of value creation and product market fit. Second question related to the hypothesis design test learning model. So in addition to interview the potential customer, with industry statistic and current professional data and competitor analysis could also help us to have our hypothesis answered.
Great questions. I'll answer them in the order they were asked, right? So I guess the first part was related to pre-revenue companies, and you also mentioned about unit economics a little bit. So the gist of today's presentation is more about finding product market fit, right? I wouldn't say unit economics is not enough. It's not important. It's also important when we evaluate deals, but achieving product market fit will go first for sure, and then you can look at how you're going to scale. Hopefully, by having a bigger MOQ, if let's say you're in the consumer products, physical goods vertical, how you can scale with economy of scale, and then really to reduce your costs over time. And if you're in software, I mean, that's less of an issue for you. Most software companies have substantial margins. And the second part of your question, do you mind to just repeat the second part again, real quick?
Oh, sure. My second question is with the industry data, statistic, professional opinions,
Yep.
On media, would it be also helpful our hypothesis answered?
Yes, this will be absolutely helpful, right? Because it will be super inefficient try to gather everything, but there's so much out there already from secondary research perspective, right? So try to leverage the data as much as possible, but at the end of the day, those are just like prior data analysis done by other parties, third parties, right? You still need to validate those assumptions through a real customer interview, and also as you build up your MVP, hopefully you can validate those hypotheses with your prototype, right? So those are important. It will help you craft your initial, the first persona, help you define your first target segment. But when you still need to go through your a rigorous study and validation.
Got it. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Naomi. Moving to Stacy.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for staying back. So my question is, I usually get when I pitch to investors or prospective investors, they always ask for, and we're pre-revenue early stage startup, they always ask for go-to-market strategy. What's your go-to-market strategy, and what's your customer acquisition cost? And I tend to rush through that because it seems like, well, we do the usual social media, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of time to talk about it, and hard to explain to them in a way that they can kind of grasp and understand that that all takes a little bit of time, and there's really no exact science. We just have to do trial and error to know what sticks. And sometimes I'm not sure what they're looking for, and we don't have the metrics to back it up at that moment. So what was your thoughts be for that?
So first thing first, I guess, usually when that question is asked is we're a bit unsure about your business model, whether there's enough product market fit or the opportunity is big enough, right? So Actually, I take that back. The question was related to go-to-market strategy, right? So
Yeah, asking what that is, what it our strategy.
Yeah, let me address that question. I guess, yeah, you could have a sounding product, and then I guess the investors are keen to understand that how you're going to push this product to market, whether you have reference customers initially already that could vouch for you. I think there's a lot of things that yes, you have an awesome product, but if you can market it, that's only half of the equation, right? So that's a little bit outside of today's presentation. I'm happy to talk more if you want to message me offline, just on like go-to-market strategy. There are various different approaches we could tackle that. And then the second part of your question is related to CAC, customer acquisition cost. And typically it's a 3-to-1 ratio or even more compared to your lifetime value, customer lifetime value. So investors are looking at whether your investments on customer acquisition is worthwhile, or whether this is a business model that can scale over time, whether you're paying too much for marketing and acquisition, or whether the customers will not be able to, whether they could generate long-term value over time or not, or whether they buy for one time, this is one-time purchase or not, right? These are the type of things that investors are trying to get at.
Thank you for your help. Yeah, I'll email you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a real pleasure having you. We look forward to doing hopefully some VC and angel office hours at the garage soon for the garage teams. I will email you about that. And do you have like maybe one last set of parting words before I jump into housekeeping?
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and thanks for having me. And this is my second time speaking for VSG, and I'm very active in the angel investment and startup community. Feel free to connect with me or message me if you have specific questions related to the deck today or anything in angel investment in general. I'm trying to put together different topics from time to time. And so, I mean, so I'm not repeating myself. And last time I talked about like investment dynamic in COVID era or post-COVID era. This time is more on the product side, and I hope to bring more discussions and more presentations to VSG down the road. And for those who are interested to learn more about the lean product movement or lean product process, I'll definitely check out Eric Rice's book on the lean startup, and also Dan Olson's book on lean product process. Those are two great books if you want to find out more about how to achieve and attain a strong product market fit. Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks, Australia.
Thank you so much. Okay, so just a reminder to everyone on the call who is a part of the Summer Smasher program, you will have lab tomorrow with David Gerber. Please bring all of your questions about today's chat to that lab. Update the spreadsheet with your goals for next week. I will not be in attendance to that lab, but I look forward to hearing great things. And then we will see you guys on Friday for our Instagram raffle for participation. And then next week's speaker is Aaron Fike. He is a clean tech specialist coming in and talking about what entrepreneurs need to know when entering that world. It's a great world to enter too. You know, we're struggling as a Earth. Our Earth struggles, and we really do need a lot more clean tech out there. So those of you who are really interested in building something sustainable and great using technology, I would say this is a real great one to join into. Other than that, I don't think that there are any more updates. Participate on Instagram. Bring your questions for projects onto Slack. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Chris, and bye. Thank
Thank
you,
you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.